college football is finally back, and it's kicking off in a big way. How about a rivalry matchup between two top 25 teams, legitimate Big 12 title contenders, legitimate college football playoff contenders, and we're doing it all in Ireland. It doesn't get any better than this. Number 22, Iowa State. Number 17, Kansas State. The 109th meeting of Farmageddon between the Cyclones and the Wildcats. Going to be absolute cinema. No better way to kick off this 2025 season. And we're here to break down this game in its entirety. Offense, defense, coaching, and our official prediction on who's going to win the first game of this college football season. Let's go ahead and get into it. You look at the history briefly. Again, the 109th meeting between Kansas State and Iowa State. Iowa State, as we know, just as historically as a program, struggled for so long before Matt Campbell came along. The Cyclones lost 10 straight in this series from 2008 to 2017. But they've now won 5 of the last 7, including last year. They beat Kansas State 29-21. The year before that, winning 42-35. So they've won the last 2. So Iowa State looking good. Both these teams, again, legitimate Big 12 title contenders. Iowa State was the runner-up last year. Kansas State, for many, is a college football playoff team. You win the Big 12, you do go. And the Wildcats certainly one of the favorites. You take a look at the offense. We'll start with the Cyclones. This is a team that, struggled the last couple years offensively. 2022 and 2023 didn't look that good. Last year, returned to form. They eclipsed 30 points per game for the first time since 2021. Now 7 starters are back on that side of the ball, including their star quarterback, Rocco Beck, who threw for over 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, just 9 interceptions. Also has a little bit of mobility. Rushed for over 300 yards and 8 touchdowns in there as well. So 33 total touchdowns for Beck last year. Iowa State's top 2 running backs now return, Carson Hansen and Abu Sama. Hansen had over 750 yards and 13 touchdowns last year. And a very strong offensive line with 105 career starts up front, one that only gave up 16 sacks last year. The kicker for Iowa State, not just in this game against Kansas State, but really for the entire season, is the wide receiver position, the pass-catching position, right? When you lose not 1, but 2 1,000-yard wide receivers, that's a huge blow to your offense. They lose Jalen Noel, they lose Jaden Higgins. The third leading pass catcher behind those 2 guys was their tight end, Gabe Burkle, who only had 296 yards and 1 touchdown. So there was a massive drop-off. Those were the 2 main targets for Rocco Beck. They're now gone. You can't rely on Burkle 24/7. They went out there, hit the transfer portal. Chase Sowell coming in from East Carolina had nearly 700 yards with the Pirates last year. That's a great pickup. Xavier Townsend coming in from UCF. That's a great pickup. So they've got some talented guys coming in to replenish Noel and Higgins. But how quickly can Beck build chemistry with them? How quickly will they? How big of an impact will they make right off the bat, especially against one of the better defenses within the Big 12? That's the question I have for Iowa State going into this game. Look at Kansas State. This is a team that's very talented as well, and a team that wants to run the football. They averaged 215 rushing yards per game last year. Their veteran quarterback, Avery Johnson, does return after throwing for over 2,700 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. But it's his dual threat capabilities, mobility that makes him so dangerous. Rushed for over 600 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2024. We know he has to improve as a passer, right? He only completed 58.3% of his passes last year. And again, a lot of the people attribute that to drops by the receivers, which is true, or just wrong plays by the receivers, which is true. But still, 58%. He's got to improve accuracy-wise. He's got to improve decision-making-wise. 10 interceptions isn't horrible for a full season, but definitely want to cut down on that number. And I think he can do that. He's got a talented wide receiver core, right? Their leading receiver from last year, Jace Brown, returns, had over 800 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. They add Duran Bradley in from Boston College, but it's really his work that he did with Texas Tech that stands out the most. With the Red Raiders, he eclipsed over 1,100 reception yards in 2 years. And they have one of the better tight ends, not just in the Big 12, maybe in the country. And Garrett Oakley had 5 touchdowns last year. So you've got a strong, heavy tight end, 2 very capable wide receivers. You've got a mobile, dual-threat quarterback. And don't sleep on Dylan Edwards, who had over 500 rushing yards last year. Sure, he's no DJ Giddens. I don't think he's going to be as big of a threat in the passing game as DJ Giddens was. But Edwards does have some great speed, is more than capable of taking over that starting running back role. This is a team that had over 144 rushing yards last year against Iowa State. If they can get to that 150 mark in this game, I would feel pretty good about the Wildcats' odds of winning in Ireland. Let's take a look at the defense. Iowa State, 6 starters back on that side of the ball. They only gave up 22.9 points per game, but they did give up a whopping 188 rushing yards per game last year. Their secondary was phenomenal. Only gave up 166 passing yards per game. One of the best secondaries in the country. The rushing defense struggled, but a lot of that can be attributed to injuries, right? The Cyclones, especially the linebacking core, were just decimated with injuries. So you look at this now, Caleb Bacon's going to be back, fully healthy. Will McLaughlin's going to be back, fully healthy. Two of your better guys were hurt for pretty much the entirety of last season. Now they're both back. That's huge for Iowa State, and you would expect those rushing numbers to improve. Whether or not it improves right off the bat in week 0 against one of the best rushing teams in the country, that remains to be seen. But you've got two of your better linebackers coming back. Cooper Ebel was fine last year at linebacker, did very well, was third on the team in tackles. The defensive line does lose 3 starters from last year, a defensive line that only racked up 16 sacks. So the offensive line did a great job of protecting. The defensive line did not do a great job of disrupting. They've got to be better up front in creating pressure on opposing quarterbacks. The secondary appears to be fairly solid. Jontez Williams returns, had 4 of the 14 interceptions for Iowa State last year. 14 interceptions as a team. Williams had 4 of them. The key for Iowa State coming into this game is to simply stop the run. Stop the run. And that doesn't include just Dylan Edwards. That includes Avery Johnson as well. You've got to respect him as a runner. But if Iowa State can find a way to keep him in the pocket and force him to deliver and win this game through the air, their odds increase exponentially. I do expect Johnson to improve as a passer. I do think he's got some great weapons around him. I do think he probably could win the game solely by himself through the air. But that's not what Kansas State wants to do. Kansas State is not a team that can afford to become one-dimensional and be a passing team when it be one-dimensional. Running, okay, they can do that all day long. But you force them to solely pass, it's not what they want to do. And that's what Iowa State needs to do if they want to find a way to win this game. That and force them into mistakes, which we'll touch on here shortly. Kansas State. This is maybe the best defense that Chris Klieman has had. Look, this is arguably the best team that Chris Klieman has had during his time in Manhattan. And that's a scary thought because, again, as we've mentioned, outside of that 2020 COVID season, he's won at least 8 games every single year with Kansas State. It's only a matter of time before they finally break through and get to that college football playoff. 5 starters are back on defense for the Wildcats. That's big, right? It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's big. They only get 23.4 points per game, only 119 rushing yards per game. Their top 2 tacklers from last year do return. Austin Romaine is back at linebacker. He was a leading tackler. VJ Payne returns in the secondary. I look at Kansas State and I think, man, their front 7 looks really, really good to me. That defensive line looks really strong. That linebacking core looks really strong. The secondary looks to be okay, especially at safety, but my question mark is cornerback. Who's going to be that standout guy at corner for Kansas State? So you look at them defensively, and you've got to hope that these receivers for Iowa State don't start clicking immediately, right? You got to hope that Rocco Beck and these guys maybe aren't on the same page right out of the gate. You got to hope that there's going to be some issues in the passing game. Again, I'm not saying they're going to get torched by Rocco Beck and Iowa State through the air, but I do have some questions about the secondary, again, especially at cornerback, not so much at safety. So I look at Kansas State. Find a way to slow that down. Find a way to get some pressure on Rocco Beck. Find a way to get him into some second and third and long situations. Find a way to force a couple interceptions off of him. This is a Kansas State defensive line that had 35 sacks last year. 35 sacks, but last year only one of them came against Iowa State. That needs to improve. The rushing defense stays strong, and last year they did get up 187 yards, the Cyclones, but I wouldn't expect that to happen again. If they can find a way to bottle up the run, and I expect they will with that strong front 7, create pressure on Beck, they're solid. They're golden, right? Take a look at what happened last year. We're getting into our final analysis here for what's going to happen in Ireland. A lot of keys to this game. Look, I understand last year doesn't matter. It doesn't. What happened last year doesn't mean it's what's going to happen this year, and vice versa. But I look at that game. Kansas State lost 29-21 on the road. Right? They should have won that game. I mean, just listen to the amount of mistakes that they committed, and that was kind of the story of the season. I feel like for Kansas State, it was a good team, but turnovers and stupid mistakes is what cost them so many times. I look at the BYU game, namely. They made a lot of big mistakes there. This Iowa State game a lot. Against the Cyclones last year, they fumbled on the first play of the game. Kansas State fumbled on the first play of the game. Iowa State recovered. They scored a few plays later. 7-0. Early in the second quarter, they fumbled again, this time at their own 30. Iowa State recovered. Scored 5 plays later. The Wildcats turned it over on downs on a 4th and 1 from the Iowa State 29. They had a field goal blocked midway through the third quarter from the Iowa State 3-yard line. Couldn't get it in inside the 5-yard line. They had an intentional grounding penalty in the end zone, gifting Iowa State a safety, 2 points. And then Iowa State took that safety, took the punt, and then got 3 points out of that. So Iowa State last year scored 29 points against Kansas State. Only 10 of those 29 points came on drives that were longer than 53 yards. So you think about that. I mean, they gifted them essentially 16, right? 2 easy touchdowns come off the fumbles, and then a safety. So 16 of the 29 were pretty much gifted to the Cyclones, and Kansas State still only lost by 8. They had every opportunity to win that game, and they didn't. And I look at this game now. Again, I'm not saying what happened last year is going to affect what happens this year, but I do think Kansas State right now is the better team, and I'm going to pick the Wildcats to win in Ireland. I do believe this is the best team yet under Chris Klieman. I think right now I would take Kansas State's wide receiver core over that of Iowa State. Avery Johnson's mobility is going to be a big X factor. And I would take Kansas State's defense right now. Iowa State decimated with injuries. These linebackers are going to play a big role, but this is going to be the first time they've had true contact against an opponent in about a full year, right? So you've got to wonder how quickly they can get back into the groove of things. So some questions at wide receiver, guys returning at linebacker in their first real game action in a very, very long time. Kansas State really not having to deal with much of that. Give me the Wildcats to win this game in a close one. A thriller in Ireland, a fantastic way to kick off the 2025 season. But it's Kansas State that is 1-0. It's Kansas State that gets a huge start and a huge resume-boosting win. My preseason pick to win the Big 12 begins 1-0, and the college football season kicking off with a bang. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks, some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. Do not miss out on those. Again, the link for that down in the description below. We want you to take advantage of it. Win big with us today. Become a member of our GE Nation. Our first picks are already out on our website and have already been sent out through our expert picks email. So do not miss out on that. Again, sign up for those newsletters as well. The newsletters over on thegridironexpert.com. There's a lot of exclusive content that we don't have for you right here on the channel that you can find over on our website. Go check it out. Again, become a member of our GE Nation. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.